Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. In today's podcast, I wanted to talk about Big Four revenue growth and projections versus salary growth. Well, the reason I want to talk about this is because we pretty much know now where the Big Four revenue growth is going to be, like the percentile range. And so from there, people don't really care about revenue growth as much as they care about their own salary. That's why people want to work at the Big Four, not because they're interested in accounting entries and signing off in weird databases to make sure the financial statements are okay or preparing tax returns, whatever you do. They care about their salary growth. So we know roughly where the Big Four accounting firms are going to end up. This is because of information that we've compiled. But what I think the Big Four revenue growth is going to be when they finally release it, which we're coming up here in 2 months, where the majority of them are going to report, and then KPMG is lagging. I think it's going to be around 15 to 20%. I think KPMG, it's tough to know with KPMG, right? Because last year they did really well, but years before they weren't doing so well. But I think this year they'll do well. They just did a mid-year raise in the UK, so I think they'll do well. I think they'll be at the top end of the range, probably like 17%, but maybe they'll reach 20% plus. And the rest should be 15%. I mean, maybe they'll understate it, but I think it'll be double-digit growth at the very least, for PwC and Deloitte. PwC and Deloitte will probably be double digits, but they might be low double digits just because of the size of their revenue. And the reason I think this, even though the economy is doing really bad right now, is because you have to remember the Big Four accounting firms lock in revenue for periods of time, especially audits. But even large advisory projects where the largest growth is going to be, and I think this is why I think the revenue growth is going to be huge this year, is because of advisory has grown 20% at most firms. So it's really these other groups that could hold down the Big Four, but I don't think they will. And advisory is fickle because companies can not sign new deals and maybe cancel some stuff. But for really large contracts, they're locked in for at least a year. So the Big Four accounting firms have a lot of contracts that are locked in at least for the next 2 months. So the revenue is going to be good for the next 2 months. And so I think from a salary perspective, people should be expecting at least 13% or somewhere double digits, high double digits for their salary growth. And if you're a high performer and getting promoted, there's not going to be many years like this year for you. Or, I mean, last year's definitely record breaking, especially with the mid-year raises. So I don't know if it'll be that high, but it should be pretty close because plenty of Big Four partners are still extremely optimistic right now, which I think is a little bit crazy. They're aware of inflation. They're aware of this stuff, but they think it's only temporary because you have to remember these contracts are locked in. But I think the economy taking a slide is going to impact advisory the most. I think people are not going to do those advisory contracts. You already hear layoffs at tech companies because rising interest rates are going to affect tech companies, financing for tech companies the most. And so they're laying off, they're freezing hiring. And what they're also going to do is cut back on advisory for the Big Four accounting firms. They're going to continue the projects they're currently doing, but any future things that they are going to do, any potential acquisitions are going to be halted. So I think right now the year is going to be good for the Big Four. The first half of next year will be good, and the second half of next year will be bad. Hopefully we don't go through the layoff cycle again. I don't think we will, just because KPMG is still doing the mid-year raise now for the UK. So I think they're really struggling to hire people. I think, and that's what I continue to say on this podcast, because I worry about the layoffs, because in 2020, Big Four overreacted and just laid off a ton of people in multiple waves, and they really regretted that. So I just worry that they don't plan for these things. They don't plan for a bad economy. They plan for exponential increases. So I don't know if there'll be. I don't think there'll be layoffs until at least late 2023, if there are going to be. And the only reason I think there's a chance of it is because how quickly things are moving in the markets around the world, how quickly things are crashing, and that forecasts spending on various things, including professional services. But right now, this is going to be one of the best compensation years ever. If you don't get the compensation you think you deserve, you should leave and look for a job elsewhere where you can get a significant increase while you still can. And I think in these next few months, you could still get a really decent increase as long as you're not in really bad markets. Then I think you can get an amazing increase this year. You should be getting an amazing increase. I can't wait to hear about the salary increases, the revenue, the additional revenue numbers. We should also see huge hiring numbers this year as well. But the other thing too is that big four accounting firms they're going to normalize mid-year bonuses and mid-year salary increases potentially. And so that's huge news too. That's something that they used to really tick people off, because the big four accounting firms are very fast paced, and people are like, oh, I'm such a good associate, senior associate, manager. I should be actually promoted in the middle of the year because I'm so good. And so I think those dreams that people used to have, but where they're high achievers, I think are actually going to be possible now. But a lot of things are changing in the big four accounting firms as the labor market for accountants and professional services continues to do well. And we'll see if we'll ever revert back to the way things used to be. But that's the update for today. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast to get future updates, and check out the show notes for useful links.